Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I am the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Keith Raynor, Ultiworld's senior editor. Hello, Keith. We're coming up on the holidays, my friend.
It's hard to believe. Thanksgiving is around the corner somehow. Thanksgiving break means no practices for a couple weeks. It means family and food, all that kind of stuff. It's be the first Thanksgiving with the family, so it'll be interesting on my end. How about you?
Got to talk about how your favorite Thanksgiving food is gravy again. Let's just bring that back.
Sure. Look, it's a compliment. It compliments it sets everything off. You know what I'm saying? It's the hybrid. Sure, turkey can be your handler, and mashed potatoes or whatever can be your deep cutter, but you gotta have that middle ground. That mid game.
I did the Drafted podcast with Preston Thompson and Daniel Prentice, and I was the third pick of three. The drafting went turkey and then ham, and then I took mashed potatoes and gravy. And I have to say, I think I made a mistake. I think I should have taken gravy and stuffing and just opted out of mashed potatoes, because the gravy is really the core thing that you want. And then I ended up just having like a weird plate. I picked duck as my protein in the final round. And people were clowning on me. But duck is delicious. It's much tastier than turkey.
Duck is delicious. Being stuck with the third protein is tough. Yeah, I think you got to still go with a fowl. So I think that's right to go duck or pheasant or
quail.
Something. Quail's actually pretty good.
They're very good. It's like a little mini chicken.
It's just too small.
On the plate, and you're like, have the little mini leg.
You would need so many quails for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's like everyone gets 3 quails for Thanksgiving. It's just like a basket of quails. All right. Well, we got a lot to get to today. We have got a couple interviews coming up with some college coaches who have qualified with their teams to head out to the college championships. Looking forward to getting into those conversations. Of course, we had college regionals this past weekend, 4 regions on the board. Southeast coming up next weekend. But before we get to all this college chatter, just want to quickly note the Club Player of the Year. Now, if you were listening to our subscriber bonus last week, you heard Keith and my ballot and who we picked for Pody. But the official awards have now been put out on ultiworld.com, and here they are. In the women's division, Lindsay Sue of Raleigh Phoenix is the 2021 Women's Club Player of the Year. In the mixed division, Mario O'Brien from Seattle BFG. And in the men's division, Chris Kocher from New York Pony. So all semifinalists at least, and a champion on the board with Mario O'Brien. Keith, I think very well-deserved awards for each of the 3 competitors.
Absolutely. No qualms here. Certainly an excellent crop. It was a weird year, but the talent, of course, still shined through. It didn't exactly match our ballots. I think we each had 2 of the 3 of those. But it was pretty close, and I feel pretty good about who won. It's great to see the celebration on Twitter. Although I saw Isaac Saul tweeting about Chris Kocher, who his teammate on Pony. And Isaac Saul is, of course, when it gets into the hype mode, he's one to overstate himself. But he said finally getting the respect he deserves. And I was like, what? Chris Kocher's been on a World Games team. Think of how many times he's represented his country and won gold medals. He was a Player of the Year runner-up 2 years ago.
He was an all-club selection.
He's been all-club. Like, I don't know.
Come on, man.
He's gotten a lot of respect, is all I'm saying.
Jimmy Mickle don't get no respect.
But that's just Ike being Ike, so I don't really take it.
Respect.
Yeah.
I always appreciate his threads. He's always got takes. It's great.
Love it. We should have him on the show.
But I mean, it's kind of crazy. Like, Chris Kocher's been the best player, or a top 2 to 3 player on Pony for, I don't even know now, like 5 or 6 years. I mean, before Mickle showed up and Pony became an elite team in 2018, Kocher was the guy. Like, he was the guy getting it done and playing both ways and like keeping them competitive and getting them to nationals. Back when Pony was, a get bounced in pool play or losing pre-quarters team. And then, they finally get to quarters, and then they load up with all this talent and they win in 2018. Obviously, they disappoint in 2019. I don't think you can look at this 2021 team and say they disappointed. I mean, maybe during the regular season, but they played amazing at nationals, and they just lost to a tremendously talented team in a really, really well-played game. Chris Kocher, amazing. I mean, I talked about it on the show, I'm pretty sure, when he got that block on Eric Taylor to basically keep Pony in the game in the final. That's one of the best blocks you'll ever see.
Great block.
Incredible.
Look, I can't lie, Charlie. I love to see more Paideia on the trophy case. We got 2 out of 3 in the men's division on the podium, and then our Ulti World's own Lindsay Sue. We're excited that her level of performance was certainly matched the award. She had a great tweet too, a draft of potential responses to her winning the award. Including this self-deprecation that those of us who know Sue know them for, and they made a comment that they're a systems player, and I was like, "She is." You don't watch Phoenix and think, "Oh, Lindsay Sue is a systems player." Like she's selling herself a little short there.
Yeah, it was good. Kyle Weisbrod hit me up in G-Chat today just to hype up Paideia. That wasn't the only reason, but he did mention the Paideia success, which it is amazing that at this day and age, you still have some of the very finest Ultimate players coming out of Paideia, this very small school in Georgia, where that's not even really that relevant of a high school team anymore. I'm sorry to say it.
It's sadly true.
Like, they're still good teams, particularly the girls' team, but like, they're not, the best team in the country. Like once upon a time, it was them and Amherst, and that was it. That's not the case anymore, and yet still, really tremendous talent coming out of there. I think you got to give a little tip of the cap to the coaching staff at Paideia.
I do think this is probably the end of us oversaturating the top tiers of Ultimate. There will still be good players obviously coming out of there, but this generation I think is probably the tail end of being the dominant high school force at the club level, probably.
All right, time to get into college regionals. We're going rapid fire because we got a couple interviews to get to today. New England, Keith, take us through it. 2 bids for each of the 2 D1 divisions.
Well, we had 2 teams at the top in the women's division that we firmly expected to qualify. They did finish first and second. However, and we'll talk about this probably a little bit in the men's division, there was a little bit of a wrinkle there. Those 2 teams are Tufts and Vermont. They were next to each other in the power rankings. Vermont ends up taking the title 9-6. Congratulations. They finally pushed through. They're going to nationals. It's been a long time coming for this program. Really excited to see them at the college championships. Tufts finished second, but is one of a couple teams who was not able to attend nationals, so was playing in the regional championships despite that fact. I believe the case with Tufts and potentially these other schools is that their school would not let them attend 2 national championships in one academic calendar year, which makes sense. Academic calendar year probably doesn't make sense, but in one academic year, I guess I can see the school being like, well, then anybody could just have however many national championships they want and ask for more money. I don't know. But so Tufts finished second, but it'll be Boston University that is sending a team to the college championships, the last seed in New England women. So wow. Definitely a surprise there for them.
Yeah, bummer. And it's too bad that we won't get to see this Tufts team that was, one of the best teams in 2020. We were excited to see at nationals not be able to compete at the national championships. And there were different reasons for different schools. Some schools had finals. I believe what you said is correct about Tufts. Tufts, just the school not letting them travel because of the trying to do it twice in a year. And I think understandably they're opting for competing in the fall. I mean, they won the second place game 12-4, I think the score was. It's listed as a forfeit on Score Reporter, but it was a blowout. So over on the men's side, Keith, what happened?
Brown, the number 1 team, the number 5 overall in our power rankings, and the reigning national champions, take down the region with a pretty comfortable win over Northeastern. That game film is already in our video subscription service, so our subscribers can take a look at that. A pretty good game. I mean, Brown looks really legit. I was very impressed with what I saw on the tape with them. Talented team. I mean, they can really go probably 12 deep with very high quality players. I think they're a team that should be considered fully in contention for semifinals and potentially more if things break their way. Northeastern ends up finishing second. They have a really close matchup with Tufts, but the Tufts men's team in the same boat as the women's team. UMass, doesn't quite pop off the page in any real way, but a deep region. Vermont was also pretty good, so. Exciting regionals, but I think it was clear that Brown and Northeastern were the top two squads.
Yeah, Vermont chirping a little bit before the tournament. They lost 12-9 to Massachusetts in backdoor quarters. Got to keep it going, guys. Next time, spring.
It's weird how the chirps stopped coming after that,
The interesting wrinkle about this one, both Tufts and UMass, who played in second place semis, and were then, playing for the opportunity to compete against the loser of the final, were both already committed to not going to nationals. So before the final had been played, Brown and Northeastern both knew that they had qualified for nationals. It was already a done deal. Northeastern does, they win it fair and square, 15-14, but a strange turn of events in the Northeast. On we go.
Two good teams, though. They'll be in the mix of nationals.
I mean, Northeastern, they lose 15-9 to Brown. I think that just tells you a lot about how good Brown is, because I think Northeastern's a very solid team.
Agreed.
And, they're going to be like a quarters contender at nationals, I think.
Absolutely.
So, North Central. Some other interesting stuff here, because Minnesota wasn't going to go if they claimed a bid. Ultimately, they did not. Carleton wins 14-7. This is in the men's division over Minnesota. And Minnesota drops down in the second place game where they lose 15-8 to Wisconsin. Who knows how they treated those games? To be honest, wouldn't shock me at all if they were playing their rookies and their bench to some extent, because why not? Give them opportunities to play in big games. I have no idea. That's literal pure speculation if that's what happened. But strong performance from Carleton to start their serious campaign towards trying to win a championship.
And of course, everyone's always nervous about what Carleton's going to do at regionals. So if you're a Cut fan, you're happy to see that they were able to navigate what have been treacherous waters for them before. Iowa State puts up a pretty solid effort. They look like a good team, but come up short against the likes of Wisconsin and Minnesota.
And Cut beat Wisconsin 10-7 in pool play. So there you go. On the women's side, it was Carleton Syzygy that rolls through to the lone bid out of that region. They beat Iowa State 15-2 in the final.
I think they gave up 9 points across their 6 games.
Yeah,
so,
they went 15-1, 15-1, 13-1, 15-2 in the bracket. They blanked Minnesota in pool play. So, look, we knew that this team was going to easily qualify, and they did. On we go to the Ohio Valley. Keith, it was a snowy weekend in the Ohio Valley. What happened?
We saw some wild stuff on Twitter. Snow going sideways out there. Not something I want to be a part of. But the women's division, 3 bids. So some team that we probably had no inkling was going to be at nationals a couple months ago,
who would never be at nationals in a normal year.
And now we have two such teams, if you count Ohio, who we had in our power rankings, but certainly I was not someone I was thinking about, last in 2020 or whatnot. Pittsburgh comfortably wins the region. Great sign for them. I mean, they blanked Penn in the finals. Blanked them. I would have to dig through the archives to see if we could find a team being bageled in the final. Now, I don't know how much Penn had on the line there. They had already secured their spot at the college championships. Yep. Yeah. The University of Pennsylvania is going to the college championships as well, courtesy of an 8-6 win over Ohio, who stomped them on day one. So great turnaround for Penn. And congratulations to our fellow podcast hosts from Laying It Out, Pockets, who's one of the coaches for that Penn team. So happy for her and for that team. Ohio does manage to take the third bid. Ohio State not competitive. We know that they're focused on 2022 and that they're a pretty young team. So Pitt, Ohio, and Penn advancing out of the Ohio Valley. Not your usual cast of characters.
They got jobbed, man. The school didn't let them play with alums, Ohio State. So Carr Sieber and Emily Barrett, who play at Harlem Goldschmidt, they're killing it at Harlem Goldschmidt, but they couldn't be out there for Ohio State.
That's
so.
just two All-Americans, no big deal.
Yeah. It's going to be fascinating to see. I'm always really curious to see, like, a team gets to nationals, right? Even if it's by this weird hook and crook way of this weird fall series. Does this have a catalyzing effect on the program? And these are two teams that are like set up for that. Anna Thompson, alum of Penn, was going wild on Twitter about the fact that her team qualified, which of course it's awesome. And so we'll see. I don't really expect either of those teams to be particularly competitive at nationals, but sometimes it's just that one thing that all of a sudden everybody's like, we want to go back to nationals, and it changes the complexion of how a team approaches the season.
Ratchets up the buy-in. In the men's division, no shortage of nationals history for the University of Pittsburgh. They win the region. A very close matchup with Ohio State, 10-9. Always love to see those two teams playing close games. I mean, I think they're building one of the most interesting rivalries in all of college ultimate between those two really strong programs, both in the men's and women's side, even if the women's side is having a bit of a down year for Ohio State. But I think the surprise for everybody was Ohio State in the second place final narrowly gets past Temple, a team that we had highlighted on the podcast. That Temple had some close calls of their own on the way there. I mean, they beat Carnegie Mellon by just a single goal in the second place game. Scores really close, probably indicative of the weather as well. Hard to get breaks probably, but Ohio State manages to get past Temple, and we'll still get to see that they're a very talented team in nationals.
I'm really curious to see what happens with this Temple team. Like, is this a team that's going to be for real in the future, or was this a stacked up, fifth and sixth year type situation?
I mean, I was shocked that there was no Paul Owens is no longer with Temple. So, to me, that's like exactly the kind of star who could help push that program higher. To see them doing that well in that game without him is impressive. They did not have a particularly strong weekend outside of that performance, I might say. But maybe the region's deeper than I realized.
So Pitt and Ohio State make it through as expected. On we go to the South Central. On the men's side, Colorado gets the win over Texas, 15-9 in the final. Texas drops down to the second place game where they play Colorado State and win 15-9 as well. So, as expected, two top 10 teams both going through. Colorado winning 15-9 over Texas, the number 7 team. Keith, we talked about where's the cutoff for championship contenders. This is what I was worried about. Colorado is maybe just that good. But either way, Texas qualifies, and so no big surprise on that side.
No, but another great ultimate rivalry in college ultimate, but Colorado certainly with the upper hand at this point, and in a good region. I mean, the results are good. I think Colorado State's a pretty good team. So to see them handled by Texas summarily is also a good sign for Texas, even if they're probably wishing they had done better against Colorado.
Scores were much tighter on the women's side. Colorado defeating Texas 12-11 in the final. Texas going down to the game to go where they narrowly defeat Washington University 13-12. So ultimately it is Colorado and Texas advancing, but it was close.
I've mentioned rivalries a bunch of times. This is the best rivalry in college ultimate. I'm sorry. This is it. Sorry to Carleton and Wisconsin. This is the best rivalry, I think. I mean, every time these teams play, it is for something big, and they play super close. It's the results are just tremendous, and we got it again. And then Texas got the scare from WashU. People don't remember that WashU was in the final in 2019, I think. I mean, people do not remember that. They upset Colorado, and Colorado had to win in the backdoor game. So, WashU couldn't pull it out then. They couldn't pull it out now, but certainly a respectable effort and a program that should be commended for their success, even if it's on the national stage.
So that wraps up the weekend on the D1 side. Obviously, lots of D3 action as well. Make sure.
No, that does not, Charlie.
You're kidding. What did I miss?
You wanted to short shrift the craziest region in D1, the Southwest Women's.
Southwest. What am I thinking, Keith?
So I don't know. Look.
I didn't zoom out far enough on Google Maps.
Yeah, there you go. Look, the Southwest. We had 3 bids. We had 4 top 10 teams, 5 top 25 teams. So we knew something wild was going to happen, and it did. It was UCLA who I think probably had the most disappointing weekend. The number 6 overall team, they failed to qualify, but so does number 8 Stanford, and it's Davis who pretty confidently finished in that 3rd spot. Very impressive performance for them. They beat UCLA 14-6 in the final, but the region goes to UC Santa Barbara. The Burning Skirts 13-8 win over UC San Diego, who finished 2nd. And I think UC Santa Barbara put up a really impressive weekend. They really didn't play any close games. They're a scary team. They're going to be one of the top teams to challenge for that supremacy of Carleton and UNC.
Yeah, this region was just brutal. I mean, For sure they would have had an extra bid in a normal season. The Ohio Valley is losing one of those bids at least, and it's going to the Southwest. I don't even think credit to Davis. If you come out of that region, you deserve to be at nationals, period. But the teams that lost, 14-6, bad loss. That's a team that Stanford team goes to another region and probably wins it. Do they win the Ohio Valley outright? Maybe. A good game between them and Pitt, probably. But I just think this was just crazy deep. It was never going to be easy. And when you have that many teams that closely clustered in the top 25, throw the rankings out. Doesn't matter, right? It's just war for the 3 bids.
Davis could be a quarterfinals quality team.
They could.
Do not sleep on Davis. I mean, if you can come out of this region, you are the real deal. So keep an eye out for them.
What happened on the men's side, Keith?
On the men's side, as expected, Cal Poly SLO comes away the victor without too much tension on their part. I mean, it's a weird format, but their closest result was 15-9 versus UC Santa Barbara, who also qualified. So UCSB is the second team out of the region. I don't know if people saw that coming. I'm sorry, actually UCSD. I'm getting my UCs confused. It's actually it's UCSD, excuse me, that qualified. UCSB good weekend, but UCSD takes the second spot. They beat Stanford in the game to go 12-9. Stanford losing the final and then losing in the backdoor. Always a tough spot. And then UCSD, who didn't even make it to semis, wins their way through the back door. They beat UCSB 15-12. They beat UCLA 14-12. I mean, a kind of a wild set of results for UCSD, like a real Sunday turnaround for them as they take the second bid out of the Southwest.
Shout out to the Brandeis women who did the same thing. Like crazy backdoor run all the way to a bid where it's like every game is do or die. Absolutely love it. Fascinating results. I didn't quite know what to expect after Cal Poly SLO. So to see the Air Squids taking that bid, not a shock or anything, but it wasn't clear to me who the second best team was going to be. I know, Keith, you were high on Stanford, but looks like it's going to be UCSD that's going to be there. And I'm curious to see how they stack up with the rest of the nationals teams.
Weird format. When I look at this format, I look at UCSB, they played 4 games. And they lost to SLO in semifinals, and then they lost to UCSD in their backdoor bracket, and that was it. That was their only shots. It's just a weird format for regionals, I guess. I understand that there seems to be a focus on reducing the number of games teams play, but you got to think it's a little odd, right? You lose 2 games and you're out. That's not necessarily unfair, but I don't think it's necessarily what people are used to either.
No, I would say it's definitely not what people are used to. It's rare you're going to just play like a couple games and then be in an elimination game.
UCSD played 7 games. How often are you going to be in a tournament where 2 teams were relatively close together? I mean, UCSD beat UCSB 15-12, and they played almost twice as many games.
It is very unusual. There's no question.
It's a weird year.
It's a weird year. Southeast will round it out next weekend. I'm actually headed down there, Keith. I'm going to be in Tallahassee filming on Sunday. Looking forward to getting some game action in and checking things out down in the Southeast. And so we'll chat about that. A little quick preview at the end of the show. Question came in from Jody. Quick scan. It looks like it's tied. 12 teams that lost in the final of the college regional tournament ended up winning in the game to go. And 12 that lost in the final then lost and didn't make nationals. So the question is it better to be playing in a big game, like a game to go, coming off of a win in the backdoor bracket, or coming off of a loss in the final, Keith?
It's tough to say. I mean, obviously the momentum of having a win versus having a loss, like it's kind of easy to turn around, but it's difficult because it's not always the same situation. You know, we do see a lot of teams that go into that final and don't feel like they have a real shot at winning. So it's like they're just phoning it in with the intent of trying to win the backdoor game once the game gets out of hand.
Which is dangerous too.
Yeah, I mean, it does give you that kind of negative momentum going into the next game. So it's going to matter on your team's attitude and mental toughness, your context. To me, I think the dangers of the mental challenges of recovering from a loss are less significant than the dangers of A, playing against teams that are near your level that could beat you, but B, having to play more games, which is typically the cost of being in the back door. So it's also going to be format dependent. I mean, if you ask me, do I want to play more games that we're going to win rather than one game where we're probably going to lose? I think I would take the one game we're going to lose and just have the right mindset, because those extra games, the extra wear and tear is just like extra injury, extra potential fatigue, on top of the extra chances to actually lose a game. So I think it's still advantageous to be in the final, but you know, these are not only young kids who are prone to, you know, the sways that come with being an inexperienced player, but of all years, I mean, you are talking about teams that are super oddly developed. So this right now is probably the time when that kind of volatility is going to rear its head the most.
I think this is where coaching plays an enormous role in college ultimate. You, as the coach, or let's say a captain who's in a coaching role, have to manage those expectations, manage the lineups, manage the energy, and get teams into the right mindset going into those games. And there's going to be different situations depending on, you know, who you're playing. Like, it's true. You're right, Keith. Some teams are going to get into the final and be vastly outmatched by their opponent. It's not worth spending tons of energy in that game, but you also don't want to just like have a really negative game where everybody's kind of frustrated and your O-line isn't really playing. Like, you need to get your O-line out on the field and like give them reps to get them ready for the next game. So coaching comes into huge play there. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen the trap game loss, lose a game you were supposed to win loss, and then just get blasted by a bad team in the next round. I mean, it happens so often in college ultimate. It's part of what makes it really fun.
I don't know.
But I think that's where coaching comes into play.
I think that could be confirmation bias. Like, it's really easy to remember the times when you saw something like that versus all the times that a team went into the final, got outplayed, and then, you know, went in and beat somebody that they're supposed to.
I mean, that's the point here. 12 teams lost and then won. 12 lost all the way out.
Like you're saying, coaching is. I agree with you that coaching is a big part of this, but this is also a year in which, unlike a traditional regionals, you haven't had time to practice and build those muscles with your team. You haven't had regular season tournaments where maybe you're in situations like this where you can practice being a mentally tough team, and the coaching staff hasn't had chances to figure out what combinations of players are in the best position to do this stuff. Like, there haven't been those reps. I mean, these teams have played one tournament, most of which were like 4 or 5 games. Like, this is a very abbreviated season. And so it's no surprise to me to see that it would be difficult for coaching staffs to manage that stuff and for players to manage that stuff in this year. And I think you're going to see weird things like this at nationals too. It
sounds to me like, as a college coach, Keith, you're just getting ready to throw the players under the bus.
Absolutely not. I think the coaches the coaches need reps too. Is the thing. Like everybody, you need a chance with your team to get to know your team, to know what your team's doing, to implement new things, and that is in very short supply this year. There's just not a lot of test case opportunities on the way to these big games. I mean, teams are playing in the game to go in their 8th, 9th, 10th game of the season. Like it's just not a great opportunity for optimization and peaking at just the right moment.
I have another question to bring up before we talk with Nick Kaczmarek of University of Pittsburgh and then Kaitlyn Weaver of UC Santa Barbara, the coaches over those programs. And it is this. Has all of the weirdness and teams winning and declining bids and, some regions getting way too many bids and some not getting nearly enough, has this started to diminish in your mind what this Nationals is? Are we in asterisk territory heading into December?
I was asking the asterisk question months ago, and I mean, I don't want to say it, but a little bit, yeah. Now, the caveat here is that I don't think it will feel like that when we get down to the last rounds of Nationals. Like, I think when we get down to the cream of the crop, they're going to feel about as good as those teams would be at Nationals in May. But I think in pool play rounds, it might feel a little out of whack. I mean, you may see teams getting just outrun by way better teams in a way that we don't necessarily see every year. I think that the Nationals field in general is pretty high quality. I mean, I think there's a decent amount of parity. Most teams that are there are good. And, I think it's going to be a little more rough this year around the edges for the teams at the bottom of the seeding. And even the teams in the middle may be, not where they usually are in May. So that it's going to be a weird season. And so, yeah, it's going to feel a little asterisky, but not at the top. I think that your title winner is going to be on par with what we see from national champions.
I mean, on par, probably better. I mean, we're talking about teams that have the addition of, maybe 5 to 7 starter quality players, even stars, because of the eligibility rules this year. So I think that, the team that wins is probably going to be a team that could beat the 2019 champions in their respective divisions.
And those stars
we can have that argument after the tournament.
Those stars are going to be another club season better, Michael Ayton just got another club season in, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And just like age, maturity, closer to physical peak, like there's a lot of elements there. I do think it's going to be a little strange. The thing is, a lot of the strangeness is going to wash out in pool play because all the teams that wouldn't be there in a normal year are going to get blown out and they're going to be gone. And then we're going to be left with these like superpower teams in quarters and semis. And it's going to be awesome to watch. Like I think it's going to be extremely entertaining. Whether I think this is representative of typical college ultimate, I don't know if I can say that. But it's going to go in the record books. At least for a few years, we're going to say the team has won 3 championships in the last 5 years, although one of them was in 2021 in the December, winter thing. But at some point, it will just get enshrined, and I think that's fine. I don't think this is asterisk like steroids era baseball is asterisk.
Right. And hey, you saw the Hodaks tweeting about their streak. I mean, they get to keep the streak alive.
The streak is alive.
It counts.
They now have the longest active streak and the longest ever streak at 21.
Impressive.
Yeah. Mama Birds got broken a couple years back. So Wisconsin still doing it. And they did it fair and square. They didn't lose to Minnesota and then have to
Oh man, that would have been a disaster.
We would have had a big conversation about that. Does it count? Okay, so let's get into these interviews. First up, Pitt coach Nick Kaczmarek joins us here on Deep Look. We'll be right back. Joining us now on Deep Look is the head coach of the University of Pittsburgh men's team and Sabonur, Nick Kaczmarek. Nick, it's been a long time. So glad to have you back on the show. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, and it's great to see both of you. It feels like 2 or 3 years since I've seen either of you, so it's nice to
basically, see you. Like at a minimum, it was 2019, I guess May. So that's 2.5 years ish.
Yeah.
So there you go. Well, I hope all is well. I heard, and congratulations, you have a new baby at home.
Yes.
That's fantastic. How is it being a new father?
It's incredible. Just talking before the show to Keith a little bit about, being a father, and it's, I don't know, just an incredible life-changing experience. It feels very cliche, but until I experienced it, wouldn't have fully understood it. So now that I'm in it, it, shifts the way I think about my life and my priorities. And it's just been a beautiful, journey so far with him, and learning all the little quirks that go with a human. I don't know. It's awesome.
Awesome. Well, this is your 10th season coaching with the University of Pittsburgh, which is amazing. I mean, you obviously had a ton of success, multiple national championships. How have things gone for the program over the last 2 years as everybody's been trying to navigate, having the 2020 season cut short and then having this sort of weird fall series get started and, trying to get things back moving again?
Yeah. Well, it's, our season ended basically immediately after a tournament in Tennessee. I can't even remember what it was called. But we were, in finals against UNC and feeling like we were really making progress in that season and kind of developing, and, things started feeling like a great group was coming together a little bit, and then it ended. It was like the drop of a hat. I didn't see the whole team again for over a year, probably. Definitely not in person. We had a few players get together for some outdoor things that summer, workouts and stuff in Pittsburgh, but just partial groups, really throwing at a distance from each other. I think that early on, we kind of talked about wanting the team to be a place that could support the mental, social, and physical health of the players. And that was like priority number one beyond everything else. And whether that was meeting together on Zoom, whether that was getting together to do, socially distant workouts early on, creating opportunities to still connect with each other, that became kind of the priority. And it was really, I don't know, kind of an awesome reminder of that's what really teams should be in the first place, is a great place for physical, mental, and social health. And so I think that really helped us to prioritize that stuff in some ways. On the other hand, like every team, I think teams experienced varying degrees of loss, of like connection with their friends, of opportunities that teams looked forward to. And so these last couple months, as we've sort of returned to play, we've spent a lot of time over the years talking about like the impermanence of a college ultimate experience. I'm sure tons of teams talk about that. It's a great way to get players to realize that they don't have forever. And college is very unique in that. And the last 2 years have really been a reminder of that. And so I think when we came into this season, players seem to really be valuing the opportunities that they have with their teammates. We had an awesome senior night a few weeks ago. It was great to hear players just talking about what they love about each other. And I think that has really been a great part of returning to play, is just having them with each other and enjoying time on the field, off the field. I think that's been probably the greatest gift.
That impermanence is something that definitely my team talks about, and something that I've always thought is a big thrust of what makes College Ultimate great, is the urgency that comes from that, the valuing that has to come from that, and the constant change. But obviously, this is a year that's unlike any of the others, the other 9 that you've gotten in there. How has the preparation for not only the 2021 season, but if you're already thinking about it, the 2022 season, how has that substantively changed for the program, which probably had a bit of a set way of doing things?
I think probably when we really started thinking about that was the beginning of the the 2020 season, which was that kind of lost season, right? That year where nothing happened. One of our coaches and I, Christy Lowry, we were sitting down and she made this comment that I thought was really helpful, which was thinking about the team as a 2 to 3 year arc and really thinking about the roles that players were in, the way we were practicing, the way we were developing strategy, as aiming to kind of be this arc that would carry us all the way through the following year after this. So having that time to really step back, I think has been great for us to, this fall we're playing with a bunch of, I guess, seventh years, you might call them, a very strange situation who are just here for this fall series. And I'm really happy that they get a chance to play their final nationals, and that's exciting. And I know that I feel super lucky that we have them because not every team is getting that opportunity. And so I feel very fortunate to have the opportunity to coach them one more time. But we're also thinking a lot about who are the players that we've been developing to step into those roles in the spring. And then who are the players when those players graduate in the spring that are going to be developed into those roles? So it's really kind of been the first time we've ever taken that 3-year view of players and really tried to thoughtfully think about and have conversations with players about where we see them going as individuals. So that I think has been a fun challenge to take on. And it's also been a great time to rethink some strategy, retool some things that we do. So it's been nice to pause, I think, for sure.
You got these seventh years, and you're talking about wanting to develop players who are going to be, in the bigger roles in the spring. How do you manage that at nationals? I mean, you're going to get into games where you're going to want to win, and you need Michael Ing on the field as many points as possible. So do you consider that? Do you consider sitting somebody or putting somebody into a big role in a game where it really matters, not maybe a pool play game where you're going to win easily regardless? Or do you just, is it just like, we're going to go out there, we're going to try to give everybody playing time, but when push comes to shove, we're going to put our best players on the field, as I think most teams would? Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, you will put your best players on the field in the situations that they're prepared for. I've always looked at, we practice hard. Practice is a huge place where players develop, and it's a huge place for them to earn opportunities. And so players on our team that have shown consistency in their game, I think consistency is, until this last year where we're managing a huge roster, sometimes you're not focused on, maybe someone has just been great on defense for a little bit of time and you give them a shot, roll them out there. But I think that we've really focused on consistent performance of skills or of a role, or, consistency matters a lot to us. Now, if a young player is consistent and is able, which is hard to do as a young player, but if they're consistent, they'll be out there. There will be a role for them on this team. So far in the series, we've played, I think, very confidently 3 lines deep. I think the first game we didn't play 3 lines deep. So that's, probably 21, 22 deep was the regional final. It was a snowstorm. So, and Ohio State's such a talented team. So that was one where we just kind of tightened things up, probably went 2 lines, 14 players deep. But I have a remarkable amount of confidence in the depth of our roster. And players work really hard in practice, and that's where they'll earn those opportunities as far as I'm concerned.
I still remember the team putting out highlights on social media from practices and tryouts. And I'm seeing these, players who look like they've never played Ultimate before, but are quite athletic. And I can't even remember some of their names, and guys who have gone on to start very strong club careers. But at the time were just novices like so many others in college. And there's always that kind of tension between, all right, we have some people who've been at this for years and years and some people who are learning the game, and you take the fall to kind of go through that process. But now you have this also competitive mindset that maybe you don't usually have in the fall. And the gap between your most experienced players and your least experienced players is wider than ever with, as you mentioned, 7 years. I mean, how at practice do you navigate having players with such different levels of experience and that tension between your outcome goals and your development of those players?
Yeah. So the honest truth is we do it probably successfully sometimes and very poorly at others. I think that this year, I think we're fortunate to have some really solid, experienced freshmen, as well as a few freshmen who are more raw, or even, I should say, our sophomore class too, because they're essentially rookies. That might be a little bit more raw, but just have such positive attitudes to their approach at practice, bring a lot of energy. So that has made it easy for me as a coach. Then I guess I would say the balance does lean, for us at least, a little bit towards developing the players that are going to play at this nationals, and making sure that they have, the reps to do that. And I think that as long as we've been transparent and honest with players, they understand how that's going to shake out right now, and are willing to put in the work to earn those opportunities, next spring. But by no means do I think we've nailed it. And I think that there are definitely players who would be developing more quickly were we able to sub more openly, have regular season tournaments. I think those would have all been great things. We did play, a lot of our younger players played on a club team in the club series though. So I think that gave them a lot of experience and helped develop earlier this year.
There is some very stiff competition in the men's division this year. Pittsburgh currently ranked number 6 in the Ulster World Power Rankings behind Brown, Carleton, Washington, and then the big two of Colorado and North Carolina. Do you think that this roster can go up and, go toe-to-toe with a Mama Bird team that is basically Lotus, who is at Club Nationals, and a UNC team that's loaded with players who played for Ring of Fire and won a national championship? Is that in the cards for this Pitt team?
I would say it is incredibly difficult to say right now until we see our opportunities against those teams. There's no regular season to develop. Of course, I have a deep amount of trust in our players. They have a ton of experience. They work incredibly hard. I think the greatest growth in this team has been our mental approach over the last year. It's incredibly resilient. There's a lot of players just having each other's backs. We respond to adversity incredibly well, and we're still getting better at doing that. And I think that's really, to me, success at this year's nationals is going to be, honestly, a team's ability to embrace the shit. There's going to be some crazy stuff that happens. We have no idea what, weather's going to be potentially, who knows what's going to happen with weather. You never know. It's in California. We haven't played a nationals there in college for a really long time. Teams are at various stages of development. I mean, some team could just hit it at nationals. You never know what's going to happen. So I think our ability to just embrace whatever comes is going to be the key. And I think whatever team does that the best is going to be successful. And I hope, I believe it's going to be us, but there's a lot of work to go into it to get there. And I think we're going to be prepared, and we'll see what happens.
If this year's regional championships, if your OV regional championships were like an attempt to replicate what you would see in April most years, how close do you think it got? How much like a traditional regionals did it feel like to you?
How close did our regional feel to a normal regionals?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Not really at all. I mean, all the games were shortened. We've had cold regionals before, so the weather wasn't totally outlandish for a regionals. But I mean, every game being short, there only being 9 teams. I mean, I've never seen a regionals where there are that few teams. So teams are playing games differently. They're managing their rosters differently than they typically would. Games fly by. So, it felt completely different. But then again, finals and that backdoor game, I just heard a little bit about it, but that was very competitive between OSU and Temple. Like, the things that stay the same or the games to go are always super competitive, and teams are going to give everything they have. And something I say to our team a lot is like, every team that shows up at every field has practiced an entire season to be ready for these moments. Every team has, I have tremendous respect for that. So every team that came to that tournament was there to battle. And I think that stays the same at a regional tournament, any qualifying tournament, any nationals. Teams are there to grind and battle. And I definitely think that was present all regionals long.
There was never really any doubt, at least in my mind, that Pitt was going to qualify for nationals. Close game, though, 10-9. It was blizzarding. Who stood out for your team? Who helped you get across that finish line with the W and the OV regional title?
Yeah. I would start by just saying that our captains this year, Will Helinski, Henry Ng, and Marcel Oliart, have done an incredible job of preparing this team's mentality. They had this team ready to deal with adversity in that game in a way that I don't know if any team that I've coached at Pitt was like that like mental edge. Like, we've been really skilled and really strategic before. And our like energy and our belief in ourselves and our mental strength comes from all the preparation. This team has a different amount of preparation. Like, it's minimal when it comes to like how much they've gotten to actually practice as a unit. But they've been really well prepared in terms of like being ready to deal with challenging situations. So I want to highlight them as captains. And then I would say Dan Goldstein took over some moments in that game. Just did not want to give up on a single play. Did really, truly some amazing stuff, both, with this skill, but also just like tenacity. He brought incredible energy. And then I truly, every person that played in that game was just grinding through difficult situations. The sideline was incredible, really energized, helped us a ton every time the disc was turned over. Whole sideline knew what to do, was involved. So, a couple players as individuals, but really it was kind of a team, full team approach that got that done.
And one of the players that you've gotten back, and Charlie mentioned him earlier, is Michael Ling, the reigning Callahan winner. You've gotten to coach some really tremendous college players, from Tyler DiGirolamo, Alex Thorne, Trent Dillon. How does Michael stack up when compared to the greats from the Pitt Pantheon, and some of whom you've played with as well?
Yeah.
And do you think he's one of the best players to ever play at Pitt, if not the?
That's such a. They're all just such different players. Some of the players you mentioned, I think probably. Alex and Tyler had tremendous offensive skill, and not to knock Michael's offensive skill, it's great, but there's like an edge to it that the two of them had that I think was unparalleled in some ways. But again, that was relative to the team that they were on. Like, now I think we're a much more overall skilled team. And so they might have not shined as much within that. What I think makes Michael great is he's such a fantastic leader, and the way that he inspires other people around him to play hard. A defender that just lights out ability. Like, he can take somebody out of a game. And that, as a coach, is, I don't know, just makes matchups fun. And I'm really excited to see him get one more shot at the incredible teams that are going to be at nationals this year, the incredible players, and see what he can do defensively, especially.
There are those that are saying that his younger brother Henry is the superior Ng.
Michael told me this to my face once. I asked him.
I would trust Michael.
Those who are saying.
He said Henry's better than me at my age. Like, This was like 3 years ago.
What have you seen as the coach? Do you think that Henry is better at this age or has a higher ceiling than Michael?
It's such like a safe answer, but like they're different players.
Pick your favorite child, Nick.
Well, my son is named Theo, and Henry's middle name is Theodore. So I don't know, whatever.
Okay, it's a lock.
But yeah, they're both great players. Whatever Michael says goes. Sounds like Michael's right. I would agree with him. Fine.
How do you prepare between regionals and nationals this year? Maybe in comparison to a normal year.
Yeah, Thanksgiving break throws things off a bit for us. We normally take a week off right after regionals, and then we come back and we're 4 days a week. They're done with school, so it's really just a month where we get to focus on ourselves. This year, that's not the case. They're getting ready for finals. We have practice right after regionals, and then we're gone for a week. And then we come back and we basically have, 2 weeks left. So I think the difference is that I think typically it feels like we're in competition mode, where a lot of our systems and our fundamentals are normed, and we're really just trying to push ourselves for the highest level of performance. And this year, I think, my approach is we're still very much a developing team. There are a lot of little things that we can work on and improve. There are a lot of players still learning to play with each other. In all honesty, figuring out how their roles fit with one another. And it's kind of exciting to still have like lots of little things to grow at and develop. So I think the big difference is that nothing's really set, and there's going to be things that are continuing to develop and grow for us over the next month. And I think as a coaching staff, we're just going to have to be like constantly ready to adapt. So even like preparing this week's practices, typically in between regionals and nationals, we might have like very specific things we were already ready to do. There's kind of like a formula for the way we go through a week. We're adapting things tonight and Thursday based on how we did at regionals specifically, and making some adjustments to the way we do things. So it's fun. It's, different, definitely more fluid and flexible, I would say, than a normal preparation.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you giving us a few minutes of your time, and look forward to seeing you out there in Norco. Yeah,
good luck to both of you. Can't wait to see you, and good luck to all the teams. I think it's going to be a really exciting year, and I hope everybody enjoys it. It's good to be back.
Nick Kaczmarek with us here on Deep Look. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Deep Look. Joining us now is sixth-year graduate and former captain of the UCSB Burning Skirts, Kaitlyn Weaver. Kaitlyn, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Congratulations, first of all, on your success at regionals. How was this fall regional gauntlet that you had to go through in the Southwest?
Oh, wow. It was pretty intimidating. It's always been such a strong region, and it's only getting stronger. And just knowing that we had 3 bids and 5 teams, pretty much 4 or 5 teams that could have easily walked away with it any given weekend, was really enough to motivate the team to work super hard, and not take anything for granted. And yeah, we really walked away, leaving everything on the field this weekend. So I'm very, very proud.
It wasn't that long ago that we I jokingly started calling the Northwest region the Evil Empire, and they were claiming 5 bids. And while the Southwest has kind of escaped that label per se, it has taken the position as the preeminent region in the women's division, just consistently putting 4 or 5 of the top teams on the field. What do you think has helped the Southwest develop so much in the past 3 or 4 seasons?
I think there's like two big things. The first just being able to play high caliber teams so often. We have three of the biggest tournaments here on the West Coast, and our sectionals and our regionals are always super competitive. And I think that just being able to see one another, see different systems, see different successful programs so often is critical, and we get to do that early in the season, towards the end of the season, just basically even like during fall quarter when teams are still developing. And I think that's just pretty like invaluable for everyone's success. And then I think second of all, we're getting a lot more like youth talent filtering into these California schools. I know there's like Seattle and North Carolina, Georgia are huge hubs. And now we're finally starting to draw that in. Like Bay Area is growing in the youth scene, and we're getting a lot of people coming to California. And I know that this year the Skirts have 4 YCC talented individuals, where in my entire rest of my 5 years, we've had 3. So already like doubling what we've had before. And I think that's been similar cases for a lot of the other programs.
So you're number 4 in the power rankings right now. And, so much conversation about the top 2 teams, Carleton and UNC. You saw that UNC team back at 2019 Nationals, where you played them in quarterfinals. You lost in a close game. What's your confidence level for the Skirts to go and make a run to a title this time around? Do you belong in that conversation with the Carleton and UNCs of the division?
Yeah, I definitely think that we belong in that conversation. We have Jasmine Childress coming back to join us for Nationals, which is a huge asset and going to be a phenomenal addition to the team. And we really have a lot of moving pieces that are coming together, and a lot of the development that we've had through the past few seasons, we're really seeing that play out on the field during this fall quarter series. I think that we're pretty much a completely different team than anyone's ever seen. A lot of our weaknesses in the past have become our strengths. Like this last weekend at regionals, our O-line, which normally is kind of shaky, known for just kind of a full send, huck and hope type mentality, was only broken 3 times. And that's after playing UCSD, Stanford, and Davis. So multiple top 25, top 10 teams. And so I am really looking forward to the opportunity to test it on this larger stage with these like very large, well-known programs. And yeah, I have a lot of confidence in our team, and we're going to work really hard and put it all out on the field again.
Now, the Skirts have this rich history with, obviously a lot of program success, and just some of the true stars in the women's division have been alums of the Skirts. I remember talking to some of the coaching staff about how they utilize those players and making them really central. And obviously now, you still have, and in the time you've been there, have had some really exciting players, but it sounds like you've really focused on building the depth of the team. Do you feel like that's something that has been an intentional focus to bring in more talent and distribute the disc a little bit more? Or is that just something that's naturally happening on its own?
I think a little bit of both. So there's definitely been some intentionality on the half of our coaches where they want to spread out playtime a little bit more, just like have these younger players and these like developing players get high caliber reps so that when their time comes knocking, they're ready to go. They're comfortable in those situations. And then also the fact that we are getting in like younger talent, like YCC talent, transfers who are able to like hit the ground running and really help the program from the get-go, has really helped in being able to broaden and deepen our lineup and just help us be more multifaceted when we're on the field.
You graduated earlier this year. How do you feel about this whole college fall tournament? Are you excited to be able to compete again? And do you think this was a good decision from USA Ultimate to offer this to not only teams, but also players like yourself who have graduated recently?
Yeah, I think it's an amazing opportunity. For just the entirety of like the pandemic when Ultimate was shut down, was living in a very short-sighted state of mind of like, I can't look forward to anything on Frisbee because everything just keeps getting canceled and it's just like heartbreaking. So I really like wasn't expecting this to happen up until pretty much sectionals. And I was like, okay, I'm here. They can't take me off the field. I got to be able to play. And I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of seniors to come back. My heart breaks for the programs where their schools didn't allow them to come back, or they couldn't come back for whatever reasons. I think it's been a great closure, and it's amazing to be able to live out the end of my college career seeing this team that I was on the team when we were 60th, 70th in the nation, and getting to play last season where we're in the top 5. I think it would have been, I always will support the team and the program, but I'm very glad that I get a last shot with them to, make another run for it.
How much is the team, another season's just around the corner after this one, shockingly, but how much is the team talking about 2022, or is all of the focus right now on how well can we do at this 2021 fall nationals?
Yeah. We are full. The program is full steam ahead also in recruiting and developing the 2022 season. So a lot of times, like our veterans, so I'll go to a lot of the practices for the 2022 season, help them out with like training the rookies, doing all of that. And then we'll break off and we'll have like 30 minutes of just like the fall series 2021 team, while we can practice with just our fall series team. But the coaches have been very flexible and very fluid and able to develop both teams at one time, which I really am super impressed by their ability to basically run 2 teams at once.
How many players who are not currently at the university are on your roster for this coming nationals? And then, like, of those players, are a lot of them able to come out to practice and be at these trainings? Or is it, because I know some schools, basically people are just coming in for regionals and then everybody goes home and then they're going to go to nationals. So how's that working for your team?
Yeah, so we have about 5 graduated players who are coming back and playing. One of them lives off in the Bay, so isn't really able to come to much. She comes to some weekend practices and also to like hang out and see friends again. Jasmine, of course, is in Switzerland, so she's only here for nationals. And then we have a few others who, one's injured, so she hasn't been doing much, but mostly local. But we're a pretty small pot of people.
And were y'all caught up in some of the confusion that was around the conferences into regionals roster?
Yes.
What was that situation like?
Very stressful. It's hard because, the young players who are coming up into these roles and don't really have the leadership and the guidance of the previous captains as much as like in normal years, and just a confusing season, so much going on. They're also the captains for the 2022 season, so they really have a lot on their plate. And luckily USAU was willing to work with all the teams, and we're very thankful that these players that were previously not rostered are able to come back and participate.
I actually emailed the UCSB captains because one of the people that we noticed wasn't on a conferences roster was Jasmine Childress. And we'd heard that she was going to be coming for nationals if the team made it. And so I emailed and I said, hey, we saw you didn't roster Jasmine Childress, and the captains had no idea that there was even anything wrong at all. And I don't think they were alone. I don't say that to pick on them. I think this was a widespread issue that happened to a lot of teams. But I was like, yeah, you should probably get in touch with USA Ultimate.
Very thankful that you did that.
Yeah. So how do you integrate a player? Obviously, Jasmine was one of the focal points of the team back in 2019, and I imagine could still be this year, but hasn't been there. How do you plug her in when you get to nationals after all the success that you've had at regionals with the current roster?
Yeah, I think part of that is being very communicative in our play sets, in all of our game film, like just sharing all of the resources that we've been using as a team with her so that she has plenty of time to be studying up, to be practicing and looking into all these resources so that she is on par with the team systems and dynamics and pool plays, defensive sets, all of that. And trusting that she is going to get in shape and be getting in those reps where she can. Obviously, it's hard because she's in a different country, doesn't have the established systems and practice times that we have here. But Jasmine Childress is one of the most dedicated and hardworking people that I know. And so I have no doubt that she'll be able to just like hop back in and be able to be a contributing player on offense and on defense, regardless of not being there for the past few months.
I want to look at regionals because you mentioned that the team had just so much offensive success and had really, was kind of able to run over teams. And you look at the scores. I mean, you play Stanford, you beat them by 7. You play UCSD in the final, you beat them by 5. You beat Davis pretty handily as well. And those are all, teams that we look at as like top 10-ish teams. What do you think was working so well to help make the offense so effective and also to be able to get the breaks that you needed to rack up scores like that?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that on Saturday, so day one of regionals, winds were 20 to 25 miles per hour. And then on Sunday, it was 1 to 5 miles per hour. So 2 very different types of play. But I think that we have finally started to develop and bring in handlers. So pretty much for the entirety of the skirts program, as I've been there, we haven't had handlers. It's been, all right, like which cutter's going to bite the bullet and like handle an O-line for this tournament. And while we've been able to find success with that, it's not the most pretty way of playing ultimate. But now we've really, we have Julia Hasbrook and Vienna Lee who have joined our programs as like transfer and a YCC talent. And they've really been quarterbacking our O-line, really taking over and just being great in zone O in whatever system's on both sides of the disc. And we have a lot of skirts that we have developed into handler roles like Yu Ishii and Maria Sutherland, who are really taking on leadership roles, again, like behind the disc. And I think that's been such a huge thing for our program, is finally having people who are great with the disc, and we don't just need to huck it every single time, and we can work it down the field, we can work it in zone O, and I think that's where a lot of our success is coming from.
One of the offensive players of the year in 2020, and she's like, yeah, we got some players who could finally play offense for us.
So how do you want to make the most of this last tournament? This is going to be the capstone on a number of players' college careers. So how do you do anything different here? You've been to nationals before, so you know what that's about. It's also close to home, which I'm sure is nice. Mm-hmm. How do you maximize the time?
I think, like you said, coming from multiple nationals experiences, a lot more of the nerves will be eased going into it, and the first game jitters, and like obviously there's still going to be a lot of nerves and excitement, but having played games on that big stage is going to be pretty crucial in like maintaining calm and composure when hopefully we make it as far as we can into the bracket and go for that semis, finals, that finals appearances. And I just want to provide that opportunity where hopefully this skirts like legacy in the skirts program is going to continue to be sustainably in the top 10 and like a very strong program, and providing opportunities for these younger players to also get reps at these high caliber games so that throughout their careers in college and hopefully beyond in club, they can play confidently, can play with composure, and just be contributing members throughout the rest of their careers.
Kaitlyn, thank you so much for taking the time, and looking forward to seeing you in Norco.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Kaitlyn Weaver from UCSB Burning Skirts. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Deep Look. Great to catch up with Nick and Kaitlyn, and excited to see them out at nationals. Keith, we've got one last set of regionals coming up. Southeast, it's this weekend, Tallahassee. 2 bids for both divisions. How do you see it all shaken out? Who are the front runners? Let's start with the women's division.
In the women's division, I think you got to make Georgia the front runner. That we'll be repeating that when we get to the men's division as well. But I think that they had the strongest fall. They really crushed the competition at their conference championships. And of course, Marie Perivier is going to be the biggest name in the whole region, really, on either side. There's some other quality talent on this team, Martha Wilbur, Fiona Cashin, Catherine Suarez, but I think that they're going to be the top dog, so to speak. The challengers, though, as usual, there's a pretty respectable number of them. Georgia Tech, probably the top challenger, but maybe it's Florida. Maybe it's Florida State. We don't really know. Florida and Florida State split at Florida conferences, so they had 1-1 results. There are some good players on this Florida roster, players that were at the club national championships like CeCe Collinson or Sydney Weiner. But I would put my money on Florida or Georgia Tech over Florida State. But Florida State's shown a penchant to get some upsets with Lindsay Allman at the helm. The second bid, though, is really up for grabs. So you might get some good film if you get some teams that are in a scrappy contest to try and get that second spot. Although we've also seen Georgia blow it. So nothing's for certain in the women's side, that's for sure.
Does the Gulf Coast champ Alabama have a puncher's chance?
We have not seen one of the Gulf Coast teams step up in that way in a long time. So I don't feel very confident that we will see that this time. I mean, maybe it's finally their time. It's a bunch of big state schools, so I've always thought that one day one of them is going to establish themselves as an ultimate power, but we really haven't seen that from either the men's or women's division. So I'm not counting on it.
Should be fun to see what happens. Georgia was way out in front of Georgia Tech at conferences.
Yeah.
So I feel pretty confident in saying Georgia's going to win this thing. After that, I think we're going to get a good game between two of the three of FSU, Florida, and Georgia Tech. I think I take Florida.
I think I'm going to take Florida too.
They did lose to FSU in the final after beating them soundly in pool play at conferences. So I don't know what to make of that.
It's tough to say. I mean, conferences this year is also weird. Like
weird.
It's really hard to say.
All right, on to the men's side. Two bids. Southern Appalachian champ Georgia, no big surprise. They're going to be the favorite here. Gulf Coast champ is Tulane, and the Florida Conference's champ is University of Florida. I mean, aside from Georgia winning, I don't have a lot of feel for the rest of what's going to happen in this region, Keith.
Same here. I think Georgia's going to be a big favorite. They obviously were a really strong team in 2019. They have a good amount of returners from that team. So I feel pretty good about them being the favorite. The second team that we have, the only other team in our power rankings is actually Tulane, the Gulf Coast champ. They win most of their games pretty comfortably, although they had 2 3-point wins over Alabama. So that pretty close. But they have Kai Dervasula, who's one of the best players in the region. He should be a really exciting player, former from Seattle. And it looks like his brother is also on the team too. But Tulane, they've been a team that has had some up years, but I think kind of got caught behind Auburn during Auburn's best years. So, this could be a great shot for them to get into nationals. Florida, who also had some pretty competitive contests with Florida State and Central Florida. So I think it's a bit of a morass coming out of the Florida conference. So Southeast Regionals certainly has seen plenty of upsets over the years. So don't count out Tennessee or Georgia Tech. Those are teams that, hot run could be really good for them. I think there's some real talent on that Georgia Tech roster too. I in fact think that it's probably going to come down to Georgia Tech and Tulane, but I think Tennessee, Florida, they're both good too. So the second spot really is up for grabs. Once again, it's a lot like the women's division in that way.
It's going to be fun. I mean, Alabama went 0-2 against Tulane, but won all their other games at Gulf Coast conferences. They only lost by 3 in both of those games. They're going to be a team that could beat you if you don't have a good game. So I've always liked going to Southeast Regionals. This should be a fun one. It's been a few years since I've been down there, so looking forward to getting some film. And
I'm curious what the format will be, because they've been one of the regions I think that's leaned most into the all bracket format, and that could be something we see again, and certainly makes for some really exciting results.
As of this moment, no schedules up yet on Score Reporter as of Tuesday night. So we will see. It should be up hopefully by tomorrow. All right. Well, that is going to do it for our show this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you sticking around, and we'll be back next week as we wrap up regionals, take a look at the full fields for D1 and D3 nationals, and start getting ready for Thanksgiving, and then, of course, lots of Ultimate coming up in December. For Keith Raynor, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.